Imagine a world where you can create not just any character, but one that lives and breathes in a multitude of environments, expressing a range of emotions and actions. Now, what if I told you that this world isn't just a figment of your imagination, but a reality we can dive into right now? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Seraphina and her friend Marina. These aren't just any characters, they're embodiments of versatility and creativity, each with their own unique presence across various settings, activities, and styles. But here's the twist. Both Seraphina and Marina weren't made with Koya or other Laura creation tools that you might have heard of. Instead, their creation was made extremely easy by an amazing tool called Scenario, who also happen to be the proud sponsors of this video. I'm thrilled to partner with them, and it's led to a special bonus for all of you, a unique discount code that you can find in the description below. So what's the magic behind Scenario, and why is it revolutionizing character creation? Well, Scenario is actually intended to be a generative AI tool to help game developers, artists, and studios to easily craft unique and consistent game assets, such as characters, using custom-trained AI models. And let me tell you this, it is an absolute game changer. Not just for game developers, but for anyone looking to create consistent characters with depth and personality. From visual novels to comics, to creating AI influencers, Scenario opens a world of possibilities. Today, I'm going to walk you through the character creation process, and together we'll unravel how to bring characters to life. Once you're signed up and logged in, you'll be presented with this screen. Now, it might seem overwhelming at first glance, but don't worry, I've got you guys. If you're eager to start experimenting, you can click on one of the Start From Here templates, which offer a guided experience with preset options. However, these are quite limited, so we'll actually skip them for now. Instead, let's focus on the side panel here on the left, where we have several options. The main feature we'll be using today is models and images. However, I'll also touch on Canvas, as it contains some important features worth exploring. We'll also cover the rest of these features in a later video. Jumping into the models section, you'll find a range of models curated by the Scenario team. These include a mix of Stable Diffusion XL and SD 1.5 checkpoint models. Picking one of these will be our starting point. You've also got some community models, which offer even more variety. However, I do want to highlight that not only are these models carefully curated, but you'll also find a selection of models thoughtfully chosen specifically for game applications. These include models based on isometric landscapes, icon models, and even models specifically for creating backgrounds. Honestly, the more I explore Scenario, the more I'm tempted to create a series about developing a game from scratch, start to finish, using just AI tools. If that's something that you'd actually be interested in, please let me know in the comment section below, especially since they have Unity and Godot export options. The first step in creating our custom character is to actually develop a foundation for us to work with. To achieve this, we need to create a set of images with a base model in an art style that we like. Then we'll throw in a few prompts and generate images until we find a look we love. So to get started, we first have to select the model. Now, if we observe most of the models here, they're all designed with game elements, animation, cartoon styles in mind. For this video, we're actually going to try and create a realistic looking character. Now, there are a couple of realistic models in the community section. However, I find that because they are Laura based, the designs or the outputs, while consistent, tend to revolve a lot around the character that the Laura is based around. So we're going to go ahead into Foundation Models and start from scratch. And you can actually see here some attempts that I had created earlier. So we're going to go ahead and generate with this model. So to start off with, since we want it to be realistic, I'm going to go ahead and add in realistic photography, high quality. You can also add in stuff like 4K, 8K, detail to make sure that it comes out well. In negative, we can add things like deformed, animation, cartoon, typical Stable Diffusion stuff. Then going back to the positive prompt, we just want to put a simple description of the character that we're looking for. In this case, let's type in brown-haired girl. And let's go ahead and generate about 16 images, the maximum that it lets us, so we've got some variety to choose from. So after hitting the generate button a few times, more than a few times, we now have a vast library of images to choose from. So our next objective is to go through the images and pick out faces that look similar, that share facial features that look like they could be the same person, to start to build the data set for our LoRa. We want to aim to get a minimum of 5 images and a maximum of 20. You can go higher, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to stick to the 5 to 20 rule. So we can already see here from the first 2 images, while not identical, they do share a lot of similarities. We can see here the lip structure looks kind of similar. The face shape looks kind of similar. This is a slightly different angle. The noses are not quite there, but not too far apart. And the forehead distance also looks about the same. So we could consider these 2 wins. One of the things I like to do is to go ahead and tag the images to make them easy to find later. So let's call her Lucy, and we'll just tag the images that we like as Lucy. So I would have normally picked this one. Again, it's not the same person, you can tell, but the facial features are similar enough. However, her eye color is slightly different. So I'm just going to actually add this with a underscore, and we're just going to call it Lucy1 to indicate that I like it as Lucy. It will show up when I search for Lucy, but the 1 tag will tell me that I'm not totally sure about it. So this makes it easy as well to add images if we are desperate for them, or discard images that we weren't sure about. This next one, very obviously, looks like a completely different person and has completely different facial features, so we're just going to skip over it. The rest of this video is just going to be rushed through as you can see me pick out the images that we need. So now that we've gone through and picked out the images, you might notice that there are a lot of images that don't look like the others. And what might end up happening is as you go through the images, you might actually find more than one set of faces that look similar to each other. So what I have done is I've gone through and just tagged everybody as Lucy. I filtered it, so I'm down to 34 images. And then I suggest you just go through and do a second pass through, make the images a little bit bigger, and once again go in and retag the images into the different variants that you've got. So in this case, I will have Lucy_1, Lucy_2, Lucy_3, etc. And doing it this way allows you to see more easily which faces might look similar to others. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I finally settled on these 8 images here, which more or less share several facial features. They've all got the plump lips, the relatively slim nose, the same hair color, relatively similar hair lengths, more or less similar facial shapes, some thinner than others, high cheekbones. So I've done my best to look for similarities between the characters and try and aim for facial traits that I want to have in the final LoRa. We also, fortunately, have different angles of the characters and different zooms. So we've got here a mid-body shot, we've got here a semi-side angle, which gives us enough variety for the model. They're wearing different clothes. So this should give us a good place to start. Now, one thing I will mention that you can do, this is absolutely optional, is if you are not 100% happy with any of the images before we move on to our next step, you can go ahead and open them. And Scenario actually has a upscale feature. So you can go ahead and click it and use a combination of face restoration and enhance upscale. I suggest doing one or the other. When you use both, the results are not great. If you want to try and get a slightly more enhanced version of your image. At this point, I'm pretty happy with them. I might put this one through just because it looks a little airbrush. So you know what? Let's actually run it through. And we can see it has a slightly lesser airbrush look. The face looks a little bit more textured. In my opinion, it has mixed results. If you have comfy UI, you might want to run the images through a latent upscaler. But for now, we'll stick with what we've got. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and download the images. An important thing to note is we've just used Scenario to generate the sample images for our LoRa. We're downloading them and we will be re-uploading them into the LoRa generator shortly. Because of that, if you have a different model that you are happy with, something that you've gotten off of Civet AI and you've run the images through Comfy UI or Automatic 1111 and you've gotten a collection of images that you like, feel free to use those as well. By the way, thanks for staying with me this far. If you're finding this video at all helpful, this is a reminder to smash that like and subscribe button. And if you really want to support the channel and get access to exclusive or early content, please check out the Patreon. It really helps the channel out and allows me to continue making videos. Thank you to everyone who's already a Patreon supporter. You guys make all the difference. Once we've saved the images that we want, let's go ahead and come back over here to Model and click the plus button. Over here, we have two options, train your own model and compose with precision. We'll come back to this one later. For now, just start training. Give your model a name. Since we've called our character Lucy, we're going to call this Lucy1. Keep your model type as Stable Diffusion XL LoRa, and then set your preset to character. And by the way, if you'd like to see me do a style LoRa, please leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to make one. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and grab the images that we have downloaded earlier. Make sure you drag them onto the box and not into the empty space, as it won't register it. Scenario will then ask you if you want to crop the images. Since this is training data, it will only accept square images, 1:1 ratio. So if you've created images from another platform such as Midjourney, your own photos, or on another Stable Diffusion UI, please make sure that they can be cropped in a square format. In my case, because we generated them using Scenario, they're already in the correct format. So we're just going to go ahead and upload them. One of the things I absolutely love about Scenario is that it makes it super easy to train a LoRa. In fact, if you haven't trained a LoRa before, this is a fantastic starting point because Scenario does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, making it extremely easy to dive right in. That just by dropping in the images, Scenario has already suggested some learning parameters and even gone and used machine learning vision to put some pre-written text encodes for the images. It's so easy, in fact, that you can just click the Start Training button right now, except for one little thing. And that is that we have to give a name to each of the encodes. Now, we could use the character's name, Lucy, but Lucy is a common name and that could cause confusion with the model. What we want to do is add in a word that represents the character but is unique, that the model might not already know. So an easy thing to do is just remove the vowels. So let's just add in LCY. And just by having done that, if you don't want to go any deeper, you can just press the Start Training button. However, if we want to get the most out of our LoRa training, we need to put a little more time and effort into captioning our sample images. What I just described earlier about choosing a unique word is called setting a trigger. What that is it's setting a unique word that the base model won't know, and the LoRa will now associate its training with that trigger. In addition to that, when captioning images, we can think about other descriptive words in the form of classes and descriptors. Classes are ways to categorize key elements common in most of our image sets, such as woman, man, sword, etc. When we include these words, we are linking our trigger to these broad categories that the model already understands. Then we also have descriptors. These are smaller, more unique items that are not in all images. By including these, we help the model understand that they are not part of the character, but can occasionally be present. These would be things such as colors, clothing, accessories, hair lengths, etc. These are things that we can change from image to image, and we want the model to know that. So now that I'm done with the captioning, you can see not only do we have the trigger word, I've gone in and tweaked the descriptions to cover things that the character might be wearing, how their hair might be done. You'll also notice that all of them have a woman to represent the category. We've got the trigger word, and then the rest of them are the descriptors that we mentioned earlier. Ultimately, when deciding the text encoder, we want to keep in mind that the more we identify and name across all images that is the same, the more we will need that word to keep things consistent. Now that we've captioned the images, moving on to advanced settings, as I mentioned earlier, it's enough to leave them as is. If you don't want to get into that, start training. However, if you want to understand what's going on here, the total training steps is the number of times that the model or the trainer will go over the images in an attempt to learn who the character is. By default, the trainer will multiply the number of images that you have by 175. And this formula is true for image sets between 5 and 20 images. This will give you a quick character training. Now, if you want to do a longer character training, I've put some parameters up on the screen for you. These are provided by Scenario, in case you want to experiment. The next parameter is UNet learning rate. This is the rate at which the model learns from the images. So meaning each training step, each pass, it will put more or less of an effort to understand what's happening in the image. In this case, it is 5 to the power of -5. The important thing to remember is that the higher the number, the faster the model will learn. That means that it will go through each step faster, picking up less details. Now, you might think, why don't we crank that number all the way down so that we get the maximum information out of the images? The reason for that is something called overtraining or overfitting can happen, where the model will go through the images too much that it won't be able to create variety when you try prompting it. So the goal is to find a balance between the model understanding the character enough, but not so much that it can't generate variety from what it knows. On the other hand, we don't want it to learn so little that it can't keep consistency in the LoRa. The default settings usually work fine. You can always come back and tweak it if you're not happy with the output of the model. Next, we have the text encoder training ratio. Like the total training steps, this is the parameter that involves connecting what the model understands from the image to the words that we've provided. The ratio is the percentage of steps that are used to connect visually what the model understands with words. Again, you can leave it at default. I have experimented between 0.2 and 0.35, and the results are usually fine. Again, you can come back and tweak this if you feel that the text prompts you're giving don't line up with the images that you're getting. Maybe you want to let it train with a slightly higher ratio, or if you need to use more words that you'd like, you can lower the training ratio. And finally, the text encoder learning rate, similar to the UNet learning rate, is how long or how much of an impact each training step of encoding will put on the image. So use this information to experiment with the settings. If you're not satisfied with the training results, as I showed earlier, here are some alternative settings that you can try from Scenario for longer training cycles. And in fact, so that you can understand the difference in the quality of the images, the encoding, the text, and the learning rates, here are some images from one of Scenario's artists who showcases how important text encoding can be by comparing bad text or average text encoding with low images, average text encoding with a high number of images, and high quality text encoding with a small number of images and a large number of images. And you can see that the best situation is obviously where you have a large data set and fantastic text encoding. But in the event that you don't have a lot of images, great text encoding can really make a difference in helping the model understand your character so that you can get expressions and more nuance out of it. So if we're happy with the settings, let's go ahead and click Start Training. Now, the training time varies depending on your settings and the number of images that you're using. It can take anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes to 2 hours. While we wait, I want to use the opportunity to tell you a little more about Scenario. Aside from having a really powerful and simple LoRa generator, Scenario has great tools to help you build out characters, including their Canvas tool, which you can use to produce a plethora of different expressions, change your character's outfits, fix things with regional inpainting, and more. As well as tools to upscale, as we saw earlier, pixelate, which allows you to convert your images into a more pixelated format to fit in with whatever art style you're going for, a vectorize tool, which, similar to pixelate, converts your images to a vector format, and isolate, which helps separate your character from the background in case you want to use them in different backdrops, different situations, or even as a logo. It's an extremely powerful tool, And if you want to try it out, don't forget we have a discount code for you as well as a referral link in the description below. If you are interested in using Scenario for game development and are part of a studio, please feel free to reach out for me and I can connect you with the sales team. Coming back to the LoRa, once it's done, you'll be presented with a screen like this showing you that the model is done, the name, and telling you that you haven't created any images. So let's go ahead and try and create some images of Lucy. So here we're just going to put in a prompt of Lucy doing something. Let's say Lucy in a cafe drinking coffee. So even though I made an error here, props if you can spot it before I tell you, put it in the description section below if you figured out what the problem is. You can see that we are getting a relatively consistent character in these images. It's not perfect. Some of the face widths are not consistent, and that could be because when we generated the text encodes, we did not call the trigger Lucy, but instead LCY, and I've put here Lucy. So let's go ahead and try that out again. So we're going to actually use the trigger to try and call her, and let's see if we get slightly more consistent images. And would you look at that? The faces are considerably more consistent after using the LCY trigger word. Now, because this is a stable diffusion based model, it runs into many of the common issues that we might experience with stable diffusion. In this case, the hands are not the best. And even though we have specified that she's in a cafe drinking coffee, stable diffusion insists on giving us multiple cups of coffee. So let's clean that up slightly. Let's add in here bad hands. Let's put in here 1 cup. Bad face. Disfigured. And let's see what we get. So still not perfect, but we do have one image here that could potentially be a winner. So one of the really cool things that we can do with Scenario is if we found an image we more or less like, we can take it into the canvas. And this allows us to do slight modifications to our image. In this case, I'm going to try and change her facial expression. And again, we may have mixed results just because of the limited data set that we created in our LoRa, but just to show you how versatile this platform is. I think this is going to come out relatively unnatural simply because of the nature of the pose, but let's see. So as you can see, the model has successfully redrawn the face. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of the facial features of Lucy. You can see the face changes somewhat, but with a little bit of fine-tuning, I'm sure we could get that working. The main thing I wanted to show you was how powerful this is and how cleanly it's replaced the face. A few other things that are worth noting in the generate page before we move on is you'll see here that there is a section called LoRa components. You can actually adjust the strength of the LoRa. So the images that we've created so far were the LoRa set at 80%. Let's crank it up to 1 and see what that does. This time, let's take Lucy into the streets of London. Okay, we're going to put in some simple prompts. Lucy walking down Oxford Street. We're saying it's winter and that she's wearing a sweater. And we can see here Lucy walking down streets that could very much look like they're London. You can even see a little red bus over here. Like with the hands, one of the issues with stable diffusion is when you make the subject smaller, the image quality drops slightly. We can try and fix this as usual with prompts. And you can see here just by adjusting the prompts, the image quality does get better. One final thing I want to show you before we finish up that is one of the absolutely coolest features in Scenario is the ability to blend models. So we've created our character, Lucy. Now, we've created a few images of her in natural situations, but what if we wanted to turn her into a cartoon character? Let's go ahead and go back to models. And this time, we're going to click on Compose. I quite like this Vivienne Laura. So we're going to grab that one, and we're going to grab Lucy. And we're going to set them both to a strength of 0.75. Let's call this Vivienne Lucy. And we're actually ready to test it out. And this is a really cool thing, is before you save that Laura composition, you can go ahead and test out a few images. So let's put here Lucy sitting by the seaside and see what kind of images we generate when we combine the two Lauras. So not only do we have a new character in a completely new art style, that character now remains consistent across all the frames. We can see here the new character has a style that blends the two Lauras together, kind of this semi-painted look, and she remains consistent in all the images. If we add line art to the prompt, we can see how the art style continues to evolve while still remaining consistent. If we're happy with the output, we can go ahead and save it. And here are a few other examples that I've tried. I introduced you to Marina earlier, and this is what some of her images look like as a pirate queen when combined with another Laura. And here is a grittier version of Seraphina. So as you can see, the ability to combine Lauras is incredibly powerful. There's even one that gave Marina Asian features, and you can see the results continue to be relatively consistent. In fact, across two anime models, it gave us Asian Marina. And that is just the tip of the iceberg of what you can achieve with Scenario. If you want to keep track of the girls, Seraphina and Marina, you can check out their socials in the description below, as well as my own socials on Instagram and Twitter. Go ahead and follow if you want to see how I improve the quality of the Lauras, as well as tips and tricks to get the most out of your image generation. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, as usual, please go ahead and check out the Patreon. Thanks again to all of the supporters that make this happen. It makes a tremendous difference. I hope you all had a good time, and I'll catch you on the next one.